crisis actor with soulless eyes.
My buddy, my buddy and me.
Telecommunications Act of 1996.
96, y'all.
Gonna filter your eyes and scrub your mind. The weatherman, he's just another bad joke. You can be a doomed little donkey like Eeyore. I'ma be an auto hoax, and it feels so good. You just ought to believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soulless eyes. No heart, ain't got no soul. Food, water, weather, books, TV, bones, books, secrets, symbols, numbers, planets, etc. Nobody got no heart.
Okay, we are live, 9/16/2024. That is Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms, Auto Hoax. One of the lyrics goes, you can be a good little donkey like Eeyore, but I'm going to be on Auto Hoax. And that kind of called to mind the term propaganda mule. The reason why we're not like Eeyore, the donkey, if you remember from Winnie the Pooh, I think he was depressed. And he was depressed because whatever it was, but he had a very negative attitude. He was pessimistic and hedonic, the opposite of someone seeking joy. The old gray donkey. So I'm looking at this, and then I remember I put out an article called, here we go, Truthers are alt media counter narrative propaganda mules. Bunch of Eeyores with saddlebags overflowing with red pills that are all toxic and manufactured by the same pharmaceutical company that gave you the blue pills. But yeah, we have none of that here. I updated the title to include something because tomorrow's big for two reasons: Edge of Tomorrow and Leave the World Behind, and Elephant Tusks put it together. So tonight's live stream for 9/16/2024 is Edge of Tomorrow, the day we leave the world behind. Not to sound too prophetic, however, predictive programming, being the predictive model that it is, would have us perhaps take a look at 9/17, because a doomsday movie, Edge of Tomorrow, was, and I'm not cherry picking. I want to make this clear. We don't cherry pick. We're not doing that sharpshooter fallacy where you just have a massive pool of info to grab from. We're looking at what is being broadcast onto the collective psyche right now. If you were to look at the zeitgeist and take a snapshot as an outsider, an alien anthropologist, an auto hoaxer, if you take a snapshot of the big picture, what would you see right now? And that's one of the things I take into consideration. And right now I'm seeing this Tom Cruise movie, Edge of Tomorrow, right in my face. I'm like, okay, what's the deal here? Well, interestingly, Leave the World Behind, which is not even a year old, and Edge of Tomorrow both have ominous references to 9/17. And leading up to 9/17, we had the event of 9/15, which was the attempted shooting of Trump, and there may be some more subtext there. We talked about additional predictive programming. I'm going to have to do a second blog post. I have my top 11 favorite examples of predictive programming for the Trump head wound. I have to do a part 2. As we talked about yesterday, we found more examples. And I'm kind of thinking here that Donald Trump chose the ear wound, or they chose it because of the Tony Soprano thing. Or it could be the other way around. They may be building towards something, and it may have some deeper significance. But I wonder, are they trying to attribute some Mafia Don mystique with Trump, trying to add that on there? And there's more to it, as you'll see. In fact, let's just get right into that, because this is the latest development on the Metascript view of the attempted shooting on Trump. So as we were talking about yesterday, as someone had pointed out in chat, season 1 finale, that's episode 12 of The Sopranos, Tony Soprano is shot in the ear. It's an attempt at assassinating this head of this mafia family. But it gets a little deeper here with this Trump connections. So here's from the fan wiki page. The next day, Ray and Claiborne make their move against Tony at a newsstand. He sees the reflection in the car. Claiborne shoots but misses, hitting Tony's orange juice. So Tony Soprano's orange juice gets shot. The shooter's name in this episode is Rasheen Ray, which is kind of interesting. RR, kind of like the Ryan guy from yesterday. And William Claiborne, contracted through Donnie Pudania. But listen to this. Tony drinking orange juice right before his season 1 assassination attempt is almost just like what happens in The Godfather. So Vito Corleone was buying oranges when he was nearly assassinated in The Godfather. And he had an orange in his mouth right before he died. So I'm thinking we can connect this to Orange Man, Bad Orange Man Trump. Wound on the ear, orange juice references, Godfather connection, an additional Sopranos connection, not the only one. But again, orange juice connection here to the orange face paint that Trump wears, that sometimes rubs off on the cheek of Laura Loomer, if you've seen the pictures. And a few more notes on this before we move on, because we have a lot of topics to cover. But there was something else, and we have a utter debunk for the ISS, but we'll deal with that later. And by the way, there were a certain number of bombs or bomb threats that were called into Springfield, Arizona, and they were all from one particular country. So they came from somewhere else, possibly Russia is what I'm thinking. Anyone care to guess how many bomb threats were called in? Put your guess in the chat while I play the clip.
Separate.
Okay, here we go. This is from Ohio governor talking about the bomb threats. And this is all in wake of the xenophobia psyop regarding Haitian immigrants and cats.
East 33 separate bomb threats, each one of which has been responded to, and each one of whom has been found as a hoax. So 33 threats, 33 hoax.
Okay, we need that soundbite. We have to have this. We have it, yes, but I have the video linked. That's just too good. The Ohio governor this is almost like they're telling us something. I don't know. 33
threats, 33 hoax. I want to make that very, very clear.
Yeah, that's clear to us. We got it, Governor. Unfortunately, the masses of programmed do not. Okay, so that's part one. We're talking about the Ohio thing. I had to bring that up. But getting back to the Trump thing, the head wound thing, there might be some more clues. Like, I was thinking about this Georgia shooter, Colt Gray, who had the red paint smeared on his cheek. and he's shooting a deer, which is kind of another Robert De Niro reference. And Robert De Niro was in The Godfather, by the way. He was the young Don Corleone. It's another Trump reference. But here you have blood on his cheek, which we talked about, kind of like Trump with blood on his cheek. And look here. The suspect in the assassination attempt the other day has this red paint smeared on his cheek, and this is in the front of Drudge. So when I take a snapshot, like I say, we're not cherry picking. We're looking at what's being projected right now. And right now we're seeing this individual, and we connected him with his blue and yellow hair to the Joker for a few reasons. And we were talking about the symbolism of the Joker, green hair, Joker coming out on 10-4, Beetlejuice, a Joker archetype, looking very much like the, at least to the costume, like the Hopi Kachina doll of the Joker. And so there's something going on here with this archetype being thrown out there. So we're just paying attention to the, again, the big picture. And then here's the Secret Service talking about a geopolitical event that could put the U.S. into a kinetic conflict. So let's play this clip. This is the Secret Service.
Another geopolitical event that could put the United States into a kinetic conflict or some other issue that may result in additional responsibilities and protectees of the United States Secret Service.
All right, some people believe he's intimating Iran, which would probably make sense on a Metascript level. I was thinking the name Ryan, kind of anagrammatically, sort of a Iran reference. Okay, moving on. Catching up on notes. Vip John said, I also enjoyed Beetlejuice. Yeah, we were making some connections between the Beetlejuice character and Speak No Evil. And someone had pointed out that Andrew Tate looks like Anton LaVey, whose latest book was Satan Speaks. And looking at the two, it can't be a coincidence. You know, you look at Andrew Tate and Taylor Swift, and weirdly, it's like Anton LaVey and his daughter Xena. And it can't be her, because people said, oh, Taylor Swift is Xena LaVey. Well, they look the same. And that could be by design. It could be a template. And it could be for a very important reason. And that's what I would say. But it's not her. I mean, Xena LaVey was recently interviewed on Jordan Peterson's program, and it wasn't too bad. Kevin Mooring73 sent me this. Andrew Tate, if you use the gematria calculator called ordinal, and I know I'm pronouncing gematria wrong. It's the same reason I say Manduzel instead of Mandela effect. But Andrew Tate adds to 666. Interesting coincidence. Okay, here's a clip from the ISS. I have to play this, where the guy drops a pepperoni on his pizza. Now, that shouldn't be possible in space. So there you go. And this might be one of the better examples of one of their flops. These are just bloopers. There's a 23-year blooper reel called the ISS. It's a reality TV show. The public thinks it's real. But these are magic tricks. And I've been getting into debates with people, and we're getting somewhere finally. We're getting to the point where we're not wasting our time talking about the curvature of the Earth. There's reasons why you can't see it. What we're pointing out here is how you get your concept of what the world is. Like, how is that filtered? Because if they filter your news media, then they are filtering your history. If they're filtering all that, why wouldn't they mess with the cartography? Why wouldn't they, I don't know, hide something? And what NASA shows us, if the Earth is a ball or not, what NASA shows us is not real. It's cartoon. It's animation. It's CGI garbage. And this is just an example of how before they had augmented virtual reality, where you would have a digital pepperoni floating around, they would use props. And this is pretty bad. This is a pepperoni just being casually dropped onto a pizza. And what are you going to call this? Microgravity? And I think they actually play this music in the ISS. All right, let me go ahead and get one more thing brought up from yesterday, because this is a topic that I don't spend a lot of time debating people who are unreasonable, but I do want to expose unreason. And I got into this conversation yesterday where this individual, and I think this might be McToon in a sock account, because this guy has no avatar. His name is Stanley796965. So it's like someone who doesn't know how to use Twitter, or it's a bot. And he said to me, green screen and wires aren't even remotely possible. CGI is possible, but it would have to be the greatest achievement in CGI history. And we're talking about this scene where this guy does a flip, and after he's upside down looking at the camera, his face swells and a vein pops out in the middle of his forehead. And he is standing by this. We'll just call him Stanley. And he's saying, green screen and wires aren't even possible here. CGI is possible, but it would have to be the greatest CGI in history. So he is overwhelmed by what he's seeing here. This is a special effect that he believes to be real, which is fine. He stands by it. But I just want to point out the structure of his argument. It's part of it is argument from incredulity. Like, I don't understand how it works, therefore the explanation they offered has to be accepted. And that's like saying, I can't figure out how the magician did a trick, therefore it's magic. No, you can suspend judgment until you have other perspectives. And in this case, he's just being incredulous and also ignorant, because you can look at the behind the scenes for Christopher Nolan's The Prestige, or some of these other, was it? No, it wasn't Prestige. Which is the one that has the scene where they have a rotating stage? I haven't seen it, but I've seen the behind the scenes where they have the stage rotating. And so his argument kind of falls on those two grounds, but also the either or. Like, it must be real in space or the best CGI in history. And my counter to that is, what about the possibility C, that this is the crappiest CGI I've ever seen? Because if it wasn't so terrible, we wouldn't be mocking it. But after that, he just got into name calling, and I accused him of being somebody using a sock puppet to avoid being accountable for this stuff he has to defend. But we're advancing. We're advancing. We have to get them to admit into the conversation the existence of special effects. And now I have what I think could be a debunk. It occurred to me today that everything we see is from the perspective of an audience member sitting in their seat looking at the magicians on a stage. We don't really see the fourth wall. We don't see from their perspective. And this is a key point. Even when they show somebody doing a spacewalk looking at the Earth, you see them looking at it. You rarely get, well, you don't get a full view. But I was thinking, in 23 years, we have not seen one example of an astronaut casually levitating sideways. I'm talking 90 degrees. Now, there are times where you see them gliding across the floor, like just gliding on a wire, like a clothesline, which is probably what they're using, clotheslines. And you see them dangling all the time, like marionettes. But what we don't see is we don't see them stationary, horizontal, flying sideways, and just casually hanging out. You think that somebody would lay down like they're in a swimming pool, kick their legs for fun, and just levitate sideways. They don't do it. Why? Because they can't. Because if they're sideways, you'd see their skin sagging to that one side. The hair would flap to one side. The clothes would dangle down that one side. They can only do their tricks vertically, upside down or not. They have to be up and down. And that's why their clothes are tucked in. They have these nicely pressed, starched, they have a dry cleaners up in the ISS because their khakis are always just so well starched and pressed. And their shirts are always too tight. Like, they're eating very well for eating astronaut food. They must really love that paste or whatever they're eating, because they fill out their clothes. They look like stuffed sausages, and they've got their tight belts. And that's because they don't want you to see the harnesses. And we see the harnesses all the damn time. Anyway, I don't even pretend to believe, but I'm just suggesting here that we've never seen astronauts levitating parallel to the floor and talking. They have to do it in motion because that's easy to fake. Just another thing that I would categorize as what is conspicuously missing but should be there. Like, oftentimes, and this is almost always the case with magic tricks, the trick is revealed by what you don't see, not by what they show you. And the space station is a magic show. for children, and it should fool children. I don't know if it does. I honestly believe that if you had some kind of a study where you had science fiction, video game, and ISS footage juxtaposed, people would not know the difference if they weren't told in advance. And I plan to test this, by the way. I plan to get experts in the field of animation, because I'm going to hire them to do some work, to give me professional opinions. And I'm going to see how many of them will destroy their professional opinions over maintaining an impossible to defend position. We'll see, but you don't have an excuse, in 2024 to still fall for some of these cheap tricks. But it's just funny that he says this is not even possible. Green screens and wires are not even remotely possible. As a rule, anything they can fake in the movies, they can fake in the news. So this is just someone who's completely unaware and programmed. It's useful to study. And I was 100% just instigating a little bit because we want to expose the architecture of the deception. All right, let's go ahead and see who has arrived. I have about 83 already. This is filling up fast. Joined by Austin 108, Thirst for Truth, Green Smoke, Frank Murray, Jungle Jim, Ears Up, Josh Lebsock says Auto Hoax FTW. Yeah, and it's Elephant Tusks. Appreciate the title. Edge of Tomorrow, Leave the World Behind. Leave the World Behind has an ominous reference to that date. And there's nothing in Leave the World Behind that was placed there by accident. That's why the station for the emergency alerts was 1619, a reference to the White Lion ship. All right, Lean Dion's here. Tominoid 3. Ted Stryker says, I want to meet Tim and visit the IPS headquarters. Mazel says, I visited and got a book. Yeah, Mazel came down here when the film company, the documentary crew from that Scandinavian newspaper came down here. I'm not convinced that wasn't some kind of intelligence operation to look under the hood, figure things out. They were alone in the office taking pictures. I haven't even watched it, to be honest. I kind of lost interest after 6 months because I realized they were putting it behind a paywall, and I'll wait until it leaks onto Twitter, then I'll promote it. But they came down here and asked a lot of questions. They didn't cut me off. They just let me speak my mind. And I'm wondering, was this some kind of an assessment? But it did actually see some kind of release. So we'll take a look. But yeah, Mazel came down here, so I had a witness in case they were going to, I don't know, send me to Guantanamo. All right, let's see. Tominoid 3 says, a couple of actors in Edge of Tomorrow are from Mission Impossible 2 about the killer flu and cure and Vanilla Sky tech support guy. Okay, the Vanilla Sky tech support guy is a very interesting character. Vanilla Sky is an incredibly interesting movie. Tom Cruise, Dave Ames, 33, dies, comes back 3 days later, resurrected by who? Sophia. The name Sophia has some connotations in this Gnostic Christ story, resurrection story, and the actress is Penelope Cruz. So you have Tom Cruise, Penelope Cruz, phonetically the same, and it all does relate to the symbolism of the Rose Cross, Rosicrucianism, Scientology. It's a fascinating movie, and I think it has a subtext that connects it to Eyes Wide Shut, which I would like to watch back to back someday. Unmediated Mind says, are we all going to die tomorrow? I don't know that, but I think that tomorrow is hinted at in Edge of Tomorrow and Leave the World Behind. And as I said, Leave the World Behind has not failed us yet. Look at what's happened with Boeing and plane parts falling from the sky. Just last week, the tail cone from a Boeing C-17 landed in a church parking lot. Okay, let's see. Green Smoke, guest first, 33. It was 33. What was the question? Oh, yes, 33 hoaxes. Governor of Ohio. Unbelievable. Tominoid says, Pineapple Express, Seth Rogen's ear was shot off. Haven't heard of that. A Hero Paranormal, Violet Pengon, Ted Stryker, Daniel Morris, Observing Reality, all got it correct. Ted Stryker says, we are all such good students. Well, what we're doing is here is we're pooling our perspectives and ideas and our findings. But what we're really defined by is what we're refusing to accept. And we are refusing to accept certain parameters that have been artificially introduced into how we frame the information we get from broadcast media. We are in the know. We've been more than vindicated, especially since Trump had that 713 event. And the details, I mean, the details are so consistent with what we and others like JL who look at the stuff in detail have been noticing. King Ravana says, classic 33 soundbite. Yeah, we're going to keep that one. King Ravana says, Kevin Nealon is doing a clown movie about Pete McT from York, Pennsylvania. Yeah, what's up with the clown stuff, the Joker stuff? So, Beetlejuice coming out in conjunction with the Joker 2 are the archetypes out there. And I was just noting the green hair and all these Joker connections to the mass shooters. And by Joker, we're also referencing like the Gotham villains. For example, Thomas Crooks looks exactly like a young Riddler. So the young Riddler looks like Thomas Crooks, and the media has been calling Thomas Crooks an enigma, a mystery, an enigma. But they use the word enigma, which is the name of the Riddler, Edward Nigma. It's all a movie, and it's getting good. I have to say, it's getting good. It's getting interesting. Elephant Tusk says, disheveled and unemployed crisis actors, the economy is very tough on them. Well, they don't have the protections of the Screen Actors Guild. You know, Hollywood has the SAG. They protest because they don't want to be replaced by deepfakes, and crisis actors have no such protections. Dirk Zink said, hey, Tim, I'm still catching up on comments. It'll take me another minute here. Dirk says, I was talking to Jake the A-hole, and he said, some flat earth dude who I've never heard of, he died. Is this story true? Maybe it was not you he was talking about. No, I haven't died yet. I mean, I hope not. I would know, right? I mean, maybe I wouldn't. Maybe there's some kind of denial, and your consciousness just replays the last few scenes or weeks or select scenes in a loop until you can finish coping. Okay, let's see. Elephant Tusk says, how could someone who has to call in from a jail payphone via credit card participate in a chat room? Oh, you mean, oh, I used to get calls all the time. You just have to pay. They have a cards, and I used to get, I mean, I had a friend who was calling frequently for a time, a friend of the channel. Kind of an inside baseball story. Hero Paranormal says, oh no, we can't talk about that. Sorry. Green Smoke, appreciate that. He says, appreciate your work, Tim. Yeah, a Green Smoke with the super chat, which is going directly into a couple of things, mainly the Insider, the tabloid, and it's guaranteed to come out. It's budgeted for, and I will have copies in hand by the 23rd or 24th, but it's 100% being ordered on the 21st. And the company I'm using is excellent. I've been testing this for years. All right, Auto Hoaxer, Benton, John Francis has swam up to the raft. Salty Siren says, also Wade Wilson, you should look into him. He's a real-life Joker. Okay, that's interesting too. Wade Wilson. So I was looking at, now there's Donnie Darko stuff that we talk about a lot with this whole scenario. And I was looking at Jake Gyllenhaal's movie, Roadhouse, which is a remake of an older bad movie. And in this movie, he's compared to a character called Waco Wade. And Waco Wade is in this book called Death at the Double Cross. So the double cross is a very important symbol in this whole story. Like Heath Ledger turning 44 on 4/4 when Trump's in jail and Joker 2 is being filmed outside. And the bystanders think that the crowd calling for the arrest of Joker are there for Trump. Like, you see how they've perfectly merged fiction and the news projected reality? They've merged these things. The public has had a collective schizoid break from objective reality. They've all gone to the moon. Lunacy, collective lunacy. And nobody notices because everybody's on the same wavelength. But anyway, Jake Gyllenhaal's character is compared to Waco Wade, which has a couple connections here. Of course, Waco. On the anniversary of Waco, you had the Oklahoma City bombing, and that was the date that Trump was at the courthouse. And the guy set himself on fire outside, the Joker guy, Maxwell Azarello. So another Joker connection, a Waco tie-in, and then, of course, if you bring in the Waco Wade thing, because at the end of the movie Roadhouse, Jake Gyllenhaal has the single eye injury, like his eye is busted up. And in Donnie Darko, it's that bunny Frank that has the eye messed up, which may connect to Robert De Niro, who gets shot in the head by the Joker. His character, his name is Franklin Murray, but the word Frank, the name Frank, not the L-I-N, just Frank, has blood all over it. But there's a lot of fascinating connections here with this Joker thing, which we'll continue to look into. Okay, let's continue. Salty said, oh, it's Deadpool's name, Wade Wilson. Yeah, there's some interesting code here. The WW thing, kind of a hidden 33. I think all the WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment logos have the 33 encoded into it. It's all theater, though. We're looking at, when you look at World Wrestling Entertainment, you have to remember they've been deep faking this entire time, pretending to fight, pretending to fill up stadiums with green screens, faking injuries, crisis acting, the whole thing, loaded with predictive programming. And nobody knew it was... Oh, okay, interesting. Jake said it was a guy named Flat Earth Reset. He was suing you, but Jake says he thinks that guy's dead. Oh no, Flat Earth Reset is dead. Yes. I was suing him. I had him as a co-defendant in a number of attempts to dox him and sue him for working with MGTV as a stalker. But unfortunately, before I could serve him papers, and we had a plan. Before we could do this plan that I had set up years ago, he passed. And I know this because I was stalking him on Spokio. I stalk all my stalkers. It's not very expensive. You just find some information, look them up, and anytime they move. And that's when you catch people. You might think you're invisible, but the instant you move, get a new job, something, you're going to pop up. That's just the way it is. Nobody is anonymous. I mean, we doxed Anonymous. Despite using bit encrypted emails, despite using all kinds of ways of hiding his identity, masquerading as this white hat hacker, we doxed him. And how? It depends. With some people, it's their pets. Their pets give them away. Their family give them away. It's usually the family. But yes, if the guy we're talking about... Oh, wait, hold on a second here. It might be the other guy. There was another guy who was suing me, but I sued him first. And I'm actually countersuing him for malicious prosecution. What happened is I sued him. He backed off, deleted everything that I was complaining about. And I'm not like hanging on to it like, oh, you hurt my feelings and a psychiatrist can tell you, so you owe me. Like, I'm not going to play like that. I actually pretend, I'm not going to crisis act. So I dropped it. I just didn't show up. I dismissed the suit, even though I had every reason, because he had emailed advertisers, among others. So this individual, this malicious troll, was anonymous. He had doxed 300 people, and I doxed him, so he had it out for me. Anyway, I dropped the suit, and then he countersues me. And it was just malicious prosecution, and I think I was hit for $642,000 for legal fees and emotional trauma, which is ridiculous because this is a stalker. I mean, talk about cry bully. But it's a non-collectible debt, although it may be the reason why Walmart didn't hire me 3 times. They hired me. Background check failed each time, 1, 2, 3. And I think that might be it. Maybe I looked reckless to them from a potential employer's perspective. Like, what do you have to do to get sued for $642,000? Well, you have to mess with somebody connected to NASA, connected to NOAA, somebody who's part of the big deception and was contracted to do character assassination, and they didn't expect that somebody would figure out who he is. It wouldn't surprise me if he's dead. Not that I want that to be true. I want all of my enemies and friends to live to see how this thing ends, because this is a long-term project. The Infinite Plane Society is still in its early stages. The Infinite Plan goes on for at least, I project 30 years, but we might be able to accomplish the 30-year plan in 10, 5 years. It depends. It could snowball. And I think one of the things that guarantees that it will is going above ground, getting into print. And I know going into print is a good idea. I've tested it before, but even now, The Onion just went back into print after years of solely being online. Dirk Zink says, oh, yes, I don't like stalkers. Stalkers are terrible people, psychopaths, and they don't play fair. And I have a counter-stalking course and an outline, but the main thing is this: don't ever put your real birthday out there. If you already did, too late. You're never anonymous, and everything you say, do, and type can be traced right back to you. And that should stop a lot of people from wanting to be stalkers in the first place, because the laws are getting increasingly defined over time, and a lot of the things that he was doing are actually considered criminal now, especially if you're like in California, for example. Matt says, they're probably collecting names here. I'm scared. Oh, they already know who you are. I mean, pretty much. I mean, and I'm not saying this to be paranoid. We live in a total surveillance society. Like, it's kind of a joke to think that you can go off the grid. Elephant Tusk says, Tim, do you think people actually purchase those supermarket tabloids, or are they part of an intelligence operation? To be honest, the most intelligent people I know pick those up. They're not just gossip rags. We're talking about tabloids. Tabloids break a lot of stories. They have a bad reputation because they engage in salacious things. They take risks. The early days of the tabloid industry are rife with unethical behavior. I believe the National Enquirer used to break into morgues to get death photos of celebrities. So there's this reputation, but nobody's holding the mainstream accountable, and nobody has the power or the willingness to destroy celebrities like tabloids. I think they have a very important niche, a role, but they disappeared because the mainstream media became tabloid. There's no longer this attempt at being respectable media versus tabloid. They're all in the gutter now. It's one big pigsty, left and right. Was it George Bernard Shaw? Never wrestle the pig. You both get muddy. The pig likes it. And that's all it is. Media itself, alt media, Truthville, it's all been mud flooded. Happened a long time ago. The internet was just a mud flood, if you think about it. Dirk says, I believe in karma. Do you? I don't think so. I do believe that there is such a thing that might look like karma and behave like it, but I don't think it happens automatically like a balancing force in nature, but I think it would require human agency. And so in that sense, yes. Like, for example, I do believe in absolute evil. I don't think that it's a moral equivalent to say that a human killing a human is just like an animal killing an animal. I think there's something deeper at work here. And I think there are some things that are even, beyond what animals would do. And I sometimes wonder if psychiatry is putting terminology over things that might be better understood as being symptoms of evil. And by evil, I don't know exactly how to define it as not like in a demon sense, but I mean, I think that there's something against good, for lack of a better term. And to deny it is to kind of be naive. And I had these experiences with my own intuition. And intuition is a thing. Intuition is a means of accessing information that I believe some of it reaches into the yet to be, the realm of possibility. And I've had a number of experiences with my intuition that have convinced me that there's more at work here on the world stage, and that your choices matter, and that there is some kind of thing going on here, light versus dark, in a very general sense. But I think that dark wins by default, and that light is targeted. And by light, I'm talking about this idea of man being something between bestial and angelic. Do we derive from evolution? Are we merely apes with big egos, kind of smart, but trying to cope with the sense that with the fact that nothing means anything? Or are we divine beings descended into avatars that are less than angelic? And so I'm thinking here, there seems to be a tug of war between those who think we originate from the darkness or from the earth, and those who think we originate from the light, from the celestial realms. And so which is it? Are you a spiritual being having a physical experience, or are you a physical being with a delusion that you matter? And I think that the side that leans towards man's soul not existing, the materialistic side, is the side of not progress. I don't think it's progress. That's one of the big lies. And if you think about it, the scientific method, skepticism, enlightenment, it's all about progress, in understanding. However, we can all look at mass media to see how even those who are supposed to employ the scientific method at some point have to turn over everything to the dominant paradigm, which bends reality with special effects. It's all been compromised. It's a rigged reality. But I also want to point out, too, I purchased tabloids because I think it was some creative work worth reading. And at that time, I also intuited that it was probably more truthful than the MSM, even though I had no idea. Salty Siren says, thank you to whomever gifted me a membership last week. Much appreciated. Yeah, I appreciate that too very much. And I am going to be producing more comments, or more video. In fact, I have an idea for a podcast series that would just be for members of the Blue Ranch Lodge. Leo Pirate says, what are your thoughts on Gnosticism? And Elephant Tusk says, dark is the nature of the game, with light being the player inside. It is, at the highest level, a chess game between cause and effect. I certainly think that there are different levels of agency, that you can choose apathy. But my reference to the intuition thing, and I'm not going to get into the specifics here right now because it's not all that relevant. However, it just seems like it wasn't just random. And when we say intuition, people say their gut, sinking feeling in the chest, back of the head. I mean, we're not talking about a voice necessarily, but some kind of knowledge that arrives in a way that might be more somatic than cerebral, like a feeling. But it directs you to the right thing. And so I've had these instances where it seems like the intuition was actually a form of guidance. And in each instance, it put me in a position to intervene on behalf of someone or some situation in defense of or in prevention of some bigger evil or tragedy. So it seems to have some kind of a moral component to it. And, strangely enough, and I have a lot of synchronicities, and I think that might be part of it as well. I happened to be reading Count of Monte Cristo at this time when one of these situations arose. And he's describing how after he escaped at 33, and he was played by Jim Caviezel, by the way, who was Jesus in Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, who was also, 33 when he played that role. But the character Edmond Dante escapes from the dungeons, and then he has all this money from the island that was basically handed to him by the professor he met in the prison. And he describes what it was like having the money and deciding what to do with it. And he said he had this vision or this experience of being taken to the top of the world, and Satan offers him all the kingdoms of the world if he only, decides to serve or whatever. And he said that he only desired to punish the wicked and reward or help the innocent. So he wanted to be an active participant on the world stage and not just take his money and sit on the sidelines. And I remember reading this thing, thinking about what it means to be to have agency and the effects that our choices make, and how our choices and the synchronistic events that follow are related. And as soon as I started making these kinds of connections, I think that's when it kind of occurred to me that I think on some level I recognize that intuition is a thing, and I place its importance above what anybody else says, especially because it's been correct 100% of the time. And I think it's also notable that the materialistic view of the world would say intuition is mental illness, synchronicity is apophenia, or pareidolia, that it's sickness to see outside the box. And I'm not trying to spiritualize legitimate mental illness, but I am saying that any experience that would suggest that there's more to us than the mere meat suit is automatically excluded from the conversation. Similar to how when we talk about the news or NASA with somebody who's in the box, the topic of special effects is automatically excluded from the conversation. You talk about Trump getting shot on 7/13, you bring up special effects. And for the most part, you're not going to have that perspective even entertained. That's how powerful this worldview shaping mechanism is. It puts people in a box and the box is the frame of reference, the screen, the ubiquitous hoodwink, this filter. And you're looking through a viewfinder. You're looking through Big Brother's viewfinder. From his perspective, there are no special effects on the world stage. There are no lies. From his perspective, you have no soul. And what I'm suggesting here is that when you step back from automatically believing mainstream and alt media, that's why I call this parallel media, we're outside their box. When you step back from that, you're able to assess the world, including that as a model, but not mistaking it for the real thing. Those in the box think the model is the territory. That's mind control. It's a doomsday bunker with 8 billion people in it. Elephant Tusk says, when you are put in the right place at the right time, it's not a coincidence. It's a specific move on the chessboard. Yeah, but what I was pointing out is that I wasn't put there. Like I was put in a position of having to make a choice in these instances where agency was involved. I could have said no. And it's pretty interesting because I look back and I can see that I was getting some sort of, we talk about Metascript, reading the zeitgeist, and I was getting some kind of narrative threads that I can only define as prophetic. So like I talk to people like JL, who's very religious, and he suggests that, I don't believe in God and my ego is in the way. And it's not that at all. It's just that I don't have experiences with it that I can easily define and put within a box. But immediately after I made these connections and I realized I was on some level I am actively participating. I'm not a passive observer, but I do see that my choices here matter. After that, I kind of looked at media closely after I had the time to, and that's when I came across this entire realm of deep media fakery. And it all made sense to me at that point. It made perfect sense when I started really thinking about the role of evil, lies, deception, and various psychopathologies that are probably masks for what we could term evil. And again, when I say evil, I'm talking about the material versus the spirit. In other words, the aspect of the world that would have you convinced that you're nothing but. Like think about the Truman Show, which is always useful here as an analogy. When he was in the Truman Show, when he was following the scripts and believing all the lies, believing in Christoph's program, he was purely, I would say, in the darkness. And so we use the the darkness as ignorance. So he was living in darkness. He was living as a limited being with no understanding of who he really was or where he came from. And that was because he was believing lies. And there's nothing morally right, there's nothing ethical, there's nothing good about believing lies. So these people who are defending lies are mistaken if they think they have the moral high ground. Not believing, the non-believers have the moral high ground. We may not know all the answers, but by rejecting lies, we're better off. So Christoph said, we accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that. This is Ed Harris, who interestingly, and I would say it's relatedly, Ed Harris plays the man in black in Westworld, the oppressor, the ones who keep the synths in the simulation. And they have to beat him in order to, so he's a key character. He represents the demiurge, Saturn. Somebody mentioned Gnosticism. It's all throughout the media, this idea of there being an antagonist to man, representative of the darkness, Saturn, the man in black with the black hat. And in this context, though, in the Truman Show, Christoph, Ed Harris, he is the man in black. He is the demiurge. He is the one giving the false worldview, the world of lies, the deception, the false reality, masquerading as God, keeping Truman a false man. And when Truman disobeys this false God and false paradigm, he escapes. And the paradigm that we have been given, the model, is false. It's been given to us by some Christoph, by some man in black. And it's true. People accept the reality of the world in which we're presented. And this is what Westworld conveys. Westworld is, I think, the world that we're in, the West, and it's defined by this world view in which we are, in fact, synths. Synths are the simulations, who don't even know they're simulations. So the people who don't know that special effects and simulations are used in news media to form their worldview don't know they're in a simulation. They have no idea. They get mad if you tell them. All right, moving on here. Unmediated Mind had said, have you heard of Don Juan from Carlos Castaneda's book about how the enemy gave us their mind? No, I have seen his books. I'll have to look into that. I know someone who's read a lot of them. Okay, let's get back on topic here. We're talking about this. So Dog Days mentioned this. In the movie Leave the World Behind, Russia recalled their diplomats. This happened the other day in real life. So here's a link to that. And this is 7 days prior to 923. And it is true that 923 is often used in predictive programming, but in Leave the World Behind, 917 is referenced, and they did recall the Russian diplomats.
This is reported by Hal Turner, Russian diplomat.
Oh, Hal Turner. So Hal Turner is an old. He's a agitator from earlier, from radio. Like, I don't know if he was contemporary to maybe William Cooper, Alex Jones, but Hal Turner's been around a long time. I think he's a big voice for white nationalists, but I think his name is a Turner Diaries reference. Let me bring up Hal Turner. Yeah, here we go. Far-right commentator, convicted felon from North Bergen, New Jersey. Holocaust denial, conspiracy theories, white supremacy. He's called for the assassination of government officials. That's right. Shortwave radio, and then a blog. But we're talking about Hal Turner, who I think his name is a reference to the Turner Diaries. Kind of like Turning Point USA by Charlie Kirk. I'm certain Turning Point and Turner are all references to the same thing. But this guy listens to Hal Turner, and it's just facts. Can't always choose your sources.
Families have left the United States. This was reported by Hal Turner. This also happened Friday.
Russian diplomat families have left the United States.
Russia announced Friday that it has expelled 6 British diplomats and families. So there you go. This happened Friday. Russia just expelled the diplomats from the UK.
Now, I want to point out that this person believes this to be true, and it represents likely that there is going to be some kinetic event, etc. I'm still saying that we're just pre-auto-hoaxing the next big fake thing. I'm not a propaganda mule like Eeyore. As we were discussing, oh, here's another interesting connection here. Look at the Thomas Crooks and this shooter from yesterday. Is it Ryan? How do you pronounce his last name? Ryan Routh. They're both wearing the same t-shirt. I mean, basically the same. The American flag. And I don't think these are coincidental connections. And I've heard rumors that these two knew each other, but that has yet to be substantiated, but I'll keep looking. Vip John said, I looked up the song at the beginning. It's beautiful. You made me discover Chief Crow. Super Flat Computer Earth is a masterpiece. Yeah, I agree. I will look for Super Flat Computer Earth. It is a masterpiece. One of the best, right up there with Dinosaurs in Space. Now, I hadn't heard of this until yesterday. There's this thing called the dead cat strategy. It's known as dead catting. This is a political strategy of deliberately making a shocking announcement to divert media attention from problems or failures. It's been suggested that this Trump shooting is fake and that it's a dead cat strategy to distract from the rumor he started at the debate about Haitians eating cats. Interesting term, though. Jordan Crowder posted this, and this is a normie take or an alt take on Trump in a golf court where it says he's on a golf cart going from the grass into the sand pit, and it says in trouble. Now he's going into a sand pit, which makes me think about this Beetlejuice movie that just came out, because we're talking about the Joker connection to the shooter. and Beetlejuice is a Joker archetype. Again, if we talked about this last night, the Hopi Kachina doll Joker has the same costume as Beetlejuice, and he's got this Joker aspect to him, very mercurial, but his hair is green, like the Joker's. And the timing of these memes all being blasted out at the same time, Joker 2, Beetlejuice at the same time, and it's Beetlejuice 2, Joker 2. So there's something up here. So the Joker being connected to the shooters, the Burning Man, all have to be added into this. And of course, Thomas Crooks being correlated with the Riddler also connects to this. So I'm looking at this situation as you are, knowing how these things are scripted. But this person here says, regarding oh yeah, that's right. One more point here. The sand pit. The sand pit is a feature in Beetlejuice. And the sand pit is on Saturn. Or it's like they go to Saturn, and there's these big things called sandworms. So I was just thinking here, it looks like Donald Trump is going to Saturn. So sand pit, let me get up a picture of this. If you haven't seen the first, the second Beetlejuice, they go through these doors, and they end up on Saturn, where you have these black and white striped, and the black and white stripes are consistent with Beetlejuice and with that Joker thing we've been talking about. So it's interesting here that there's a red flag in the back, might mean something, going into a sand pit, and it says, in trouble. But this is a normie take on it. The normie says, you can't make this up. They understand how the simulation operates. So he doesn't mean simulation in the sense that it's a fake news matrix. He means that this is a real simulation. Elon Musk is being called out for saying, and no one's even trying to assassinate Biden, Kamala. A lot of people are kind of upset that he said this, taking umbrage with it, and I would understand why. It's kind of like dog whistling. So now if anything happens, they're going to blame Elon Musk. They're going to blame X, disease X. And the comments are ruthless. A lot of people are calling for his arrest for incitement. A couple more pictures of the shooter, because the pictures they blast out initially are the ones to pay attention to. Here he is with a red cross on a white shirt. And we've talked about the Templar connections there. And then here at the arrest site, he's got a pink shirt. So we talked about the symbolism of pink in Barbie, pink with the nuke scenario, as in the radiation, and then Godzilla with his pink spikes. So there's something up here with the color pink, and again, this is derived from mixing the red and the white, and in the symbolism, in the tarot, in the description of the card with the Whore of Babylon holding the chalice, they describe how it's pink because it represents the god and the goddess. And so the cross, we talked about Rose Cross earlier, same body of symbols. But anyway, the fact that he's wearing this and has the pink actually kind of correlates. Nothing about this is organic or real. We're just decoding the story. By the way, I had mentioned dinosaurs in space. Just kind of a side note. The asteroid that hit the Earth 66 million years ago that wiped out the dinos was 6 miles wide. Nice little 666 there. Violet Pengon says, IPS called it ahead, disease X. Yeah, we read the script, and now we're seeing it in action. We're seeing disease X, and the monkeypox being released was like that was when they really started it. It's a formal now. They're now going to lock us down for the mind virus when it goes pandemic. And the mind virus is disease X. Yeah, the red X. Yeah, the Templar cross, the red X on the white. It ties into a body of symbolism that we've been discussing that ties into the Gnostic myth. It ties into the Thelemic or the Gnostic Catholic Mass, which they practice. Ooh, nice. This is interesting. So, Leave the World Behind was released on 11/22, JFK's assassination date, and it takes place in zip code 11963. It has a 1963. So it already has this JFK assassination theme or subtext kind of just thrown in there at the very beginning by the release dates. Well, according to Cubstar, the occultation is going to happen at 11:22 of the full moon. So the full moon is occulting Saturn today. Fascinating. Everything is tied to the stars. Remember, 9/11 started at 8:46 a.m. Everything's precisely aligned, the timing of everything. George Floyd kneeled on for 8:46, Twin Cities, Twin Towers, the sun set in the Twin Cities on that day, 5/25/2020, at 8:46. Everything is precise, and it's because their astro-theological cult bases their narratives on the realms above. It's like this. It's one of their dictums, as above, so below. It is certainly the case that would explain precise alignments, quote, globally, even before mass media. Matt Armitage says we can watch Bad Monkey while locked down for monkeypox. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I meant to finish watching it. Wednesday, the new episodes come out. I've been keeping up with it, and I started watching Furiosa last night, the Mad Max. And Furiosa is another one of these movies with a strong female protagonist, and I'm watching it for any predictive programming regarding Kamala. So I'm only halfway through, but I'll have a full report tomorrow. I tend to wake up like randomly, like 4 a.m. And so I made it a habit now. If I do, which I often do, I catch up on my predictive programming. So I watched Rebel Ridge, and let's take a look really quick and see, has Tyreek Hill had any updates with the PSYOP? Cops have been punished. Oh, no, other way around. Cops punished Tyreek Hill, says a legal expert. So it's not over yet. Brother of police officer who arrested Tyreek Hill says the Dolphins star is dangerous. We'll see. Brother of cop placed on leave after Tyreek Hill detainment. So if you don't know the story is Tyreek Hill was very publicly treated roughly by some police, pulled over for no reason. And this happened right after Rebel Ridge comes out, and Rebel Ridge basically had the same story. Another interesting point is that the actor for Rebel Ridge wasn't the first pick. It was originally going to be another actor from They Cloned Tyrone. And I was talking about the connections between Tyree, the name, Hiram of Tyre, Tyree Nichols, and Tyreek Nichols is a Rodney King tie-in. So it goes pretty deep, but it all gets into the start of BLM as a martyr cult. But They Cloned Tyrone has Jamie Foxx, who was instrumental in the launch of BLM alongside Trayvon Martin. And of course, Trey, kind of an anagram for Tyree again. So we were doing this decode. And yeah, it turns out that one of the actors from They Cloned Tyrone, which is another death resurrection thing, cloning, one of those actors was going to be the guy in this movie whose role was enacted on the world stage by Tyreek Hill. Rebel Ridge ending, does Terry get justice? So I didn't even know this. The character's name is Terry, another anagram containing Tyree, Tyre. And this all connects to the Masonic lore with King Solomon, Hiram Abiff, and the death resurrection narrative. Now let's see if there's anything else in here. If you haven't seen it, Rebel Ridge has a lot of predictive programming for the next wave of whatever BLM narrative is going to come out next about the police. Aaron Pierre explains how Rebel Ridge exposes the real process that allows the police to seize property without charges. So this is going to really bolster, I think, a lot of the social justice narratives. Definitely a movie that's portraying cops, the police, as villains, as a racist mafia. Systemic racism is a huge part of this movie. And one other point on this. I mentioned Jamie Foxx. Before Jamie Foxx did They Cloned Tyrone, he supposedly died on a movie set and then came back to life. And when he was making some statement on Instagram, people said he was a clone. He said he wasn't a clone. Then the movie They Cloned Tyrone came out separately. Aside from all of that, at the time that Trayvon Martin's trial was out there and Jamie Foxx was promoting BLM, the movie Django Unchained was out. And Django Unchained is, I think it's inspired by Nat Turner. There's that name again. But Nat Turner, slave rebellion, killing, that whole scenario. But interestingly, while that happened, Christopher Dorner goes on a killing spree because of killing cops. He's killing cops because he says that there's systemic racism keeping him from getting promoted. Christopher Dorner was 33 and he was incinerated in a cabin. But if you get the subtext here, cop taking revenge against systemic racism. Rebel Ridge is about systemic racism in the police departments. It's kind of a key component here. But the name They Clone Tyrone, the name Tyree is just kind of encoded into Tyrone as well. Okay, let me see what's happening in comments. Okay, interesting. Cubstar says Furiosa is a Persephone retelling. Now, I talked about the Man in Black archetype and Truman and the Demiurge-like character. And in the Truman Show, you have someone who's in this underworld. Similarly, Persephone, she's taken into the underworld. And in Westworld, you could look at Westworld as the underworld where the synths are and they have to break out. So there's this dynamic set up there with the main character, Dolores. And so it's Dolores versus the Man in Black. She's Persephone and he is Hades. Hades takes Persephone into the underworld at the autumn equinox. And the autumn equinox is happening in a few days. So when we go into the dark half of the year, and so she doesn't stay for the whole 6 months, but she's kidnapped. So the kidnapping of Persephone is a story that we're seeing often portrayed in the media through using similar archetypes. It's the spring maiden. So for example, Gabby Petito being kidnapped by Brian Laundrie, or Brain Laundrie, brainwashing, if you recall the story, which would make sense in this case. But she was 22, and we saw a lot of the number 22 associated with this. But on the 22nd, we go into Hades. But the story here, it's big in mind control, and it's big in a lot of the predictive programming. Like, so I mentioned Dolores in Westworld, and she's facing the Man in Black. The name Dolores is very similar to Dorothy, and Dorothy's against the Wizard of Oz. Same story. Oz is like the underworld, like Westworld, or it's similar to Alice and the Mad Hatter in the, well, you go down the rabbit hole into the Wonderland. So Wonderland, like Oz or Westworld, is this alternate realm, the mind-controlled realm. A closed system controlled by some psychopath in a crazy hat. And so the archetype of Hades and Persephone is very prevalent in a lot of these different shows and movies. And it's an interesting study when you see how many actresses are used for the same role again and again. Because Dolores in Westworld also plays Dolores Hayes in a music video based on a Stanley Kubrick film, Lolita. So Lolita's real name is Dolores Hayes. So there's a number of connections here we can get into. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but Furiosa, Persephone, it's there. I'm already halfway through it. The whole, so I'm gonna hold off and do a full review. But nice catch there. What's up, 737? You are, yes. We started about 1 hour and 33 seconds ago. We've been talking about we went into some deeper detail into the Sopranos connection to the Trump shooting. We've been talking about the shooters and their connection to Joker. And I was noting how Colt Gray was pictured with a smear of blood on his cheek on Elvis's birthday, no less. And this recent shooter is pictured with a big spot of red on his cheek. And these are also connected in another way. Robert De Niro, Deer Hunter. Robert De Niro has been very prominent in a lot of the predictive programming. He is Franklin Murray getting shot by the Joker. The Joker inspired by Travis Bickle, a presidential or a would-be assassin who inspired a real assassination attempt on Reagan. We've been talking about the fake space program and how it's pretty obvious that these individuals are limited in what they can do. And what gives away the hoax is what they don't show you, what they can't show you. A couple of other connections. Tony Soprano and Godfather, both of these assassination attempts, both of them involve oranges. So Soprano's orange juice gets shot, and Vito Corleone's eating an orange when he dies, and there's oranges associated with these assassination attempts. So he's in The Godfather. He's buying oranges, and you see them rolling down the street. So this would connect in a way to Donald Trump. Again, the orange face paint. And here's Soprano with blood on his cheek and a bandage on his ear. What do you make of that? And again, Tony Soprano is another Mafia Don connection. We're still getting more information on Ryan Routh. Initials RR, same initials as the guy that shot at Trump, by the way. I'm looking at tomorrow, so we'll bring up these details really fast here as well. So tomorrow's a pretty big deal, 9/17. Leave the World Behind has an ominous reference in its final scene where it shows the computer. And on the screen, you see a reference, the numbers 9, 2, here it is, 9/17/24. And then in the movie Edge of Tomorrow, which I haven't seen, but it was promoted to me, which is why I'm saying it's relevant. Why I'm saying we're not cherry picking. If they're promoting something, if it's thrust into your face, like right now you go into a supermarket, you're probably going to see Taylor Swift. And I'm sorry we had a moratorium on Taylor Swift mentions, but she's back. She's being projected for some reason. It could be witchcraft reasons, you know. She is definitely embodying certain archetypes, and we are approaching a major holiday here on the pagan calendar. So here is Blank Check on Twitter. He said, Netflix just re-released the 2014 film Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise. Now, Tom Cruise was most recently cited at the Paris Olympics rappelling 42 meters down from the roof. So he fell 42 meters. The 42, that number was mentioned recently in the Washington Examiner. It talked about how the most important 42-mile stretch in America right now is the stretch connecting Butler, Pennsylvania to Palestine, Ohio. That 42-mile stretch connecting the headshot from the train derailment, which was blamed on Trump and deregulation, but it had the big mushroom cloud and the name Palestine being thrown in there. So Metascript-wise, there's something brewing. Another point here, Edge of Tomorrow is a doomsday film, and in the scene here, a general secretary is named Iris, and her birthday is 9/17. So what does Iris mean here in this context? Not quite sure, but I think a Siri, you know, on the iPhone. There's something there with also the Mission Impossible movie, this idea of the AI. There's something going on here. Not quite sure yet. But 9/17 reference Edge of Tomorrow. And then here it is, Leave the World Behind. It says White House and major cities under attack. Emergency alert 9/17/24. Pretty blatant. And this movie also has the Russian diplomats being sent home. Quay says Matt at Quantum of Conscience did a video about Edge of Tomorrow. Seem to think it's complicated, hard to understand. You know what I'll do is I'll watch it tonight. I'll watch it tonight and we'll see what we find. And just so you all know, I do watch movies and I do like movies. Like, it's not a punishment for me to sit and watch Netflix all night. So if you want me to watch something that you don't feel like watching, I will. I'll take one for the team. I watched Barbie. Judging by the hype, I thought it was going to be full of people wearing Barbie costumes and a bunch of fans, and no, not at all. Just like Sound of Freedom was empty, air conditioning was just fine, no nanobots in my Dr. Pepper. Observing Reality says, and the video of David Weiss and his wife while she moves the things he's holding against a green screen is a good example of how they pull off. Yeah, the people who say that's not green screen just don't know how green screen works. Okay, Jurassic Liars, I'm glad you brought this up, because I may have seen Edge of Tomorrow. Because I specifically remember Tom Cruise. Okay, I've seen it. I've already seen it. I remember Tom Cruise in his little spaceship. I was trying to figure out what movie it was. And he has an Elvis Presley bobblehead. And he goes down to the scene. Here it is. Funko Elvis Presley. I'll see if I can pull it up. There's an Elvis bobblehead on Tom Cruise's dashboard. And he's going down to the earth to a football stadium that had been nuked. So here's the Elvis bobblehead. No, this was the Elvis bobblehead was in Oblivion. So not Edge of Tomorrow. But I'm glad you brought it up. So Oblivion. Now let me bring up Oblivion because I think there's some significance to the football field. And it might tie into Seattle. So Oblivion, Tom Cruise, nuke football. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, I found it. Oblivion 2013 stadium scene. So there's something up with the stadium, if anyone here wants to fill me in. But there are two key points. The stadium and the intimation it was nuked. And next to that, the Elvis Presley bobblehead. Edge of Tomorrow is a whole other thing. Okay, here we go.
Before the war. New York. Before I was born. A place I've only seen pictures of. I know you.
Alright, I'm looking at the opening scene. I'm going to scroll through. Now, if anyone has any further details on this or can get me the direct reference I'm looking for, I know we've looked at this in the Annals of IPS Predictive Programming Analysis, but there's something ominous about that Elvis bobblehead in such a dystopic movie. But I'm glad you brought it up, Jurassic Liars. Even though it's not Edge of Tomorrow, I'm glad you brought it up. The subtext of Edge of Tomorrow is about the soul trap reincarnation cycle we are stuck in. You know what's interesting about that is Vanilla Sky with Tom Cruise is kind of similar. It's about a guy who dies at 33, and 3 days later he's resurrected, but he's resurrected into a simulation. And he has to decide if he wants to exit the simulation and go back into incarnation, or if he wants to stay in the illusion. And he has to jump off the building in order to reincarnate. He has to fall to earth. So think about the man falling to earth, the idea of the spiritual being incarnating into matter, and the number 42, its association with Saturn, and with Tom Cruise jumping 42 meters down. There's a occult significance to him jumping off the building, and when he lands, they show an eye opening, like an iris. It's a close-up, and the movie was originally called Open Your Eyes. Vanilla Sky is the title they gave it in English. And I do connect eyes wide shut to open your eyes. There's a connection between the two, and it makes perfect sense, in my opinion. But in that movie, he's also confronted by a woman in red who's sort of the gatekeeper to waking up. And that would correlate to this constant archetype that we're shown, like the Red Witch in Game of Thrones. Various instances of high-profile celebrities wearing red. It's all about the Scarlet Woman, like Marjorie Cameron or Margot Robbie in Hollywood. It's the same archetype that they gave us in the Barbie doll. Not a coincidence that, and we were talking about it at the time, Doja Cat comes out in this red wardrobe, head to toe covered in red, and then her subsequent album is called Scarlet. And it has a image, the whole opening night when they released the album, it had this idol of her, like a big doll, an idol, in this tub filling up with, I think, blood. Okay, let's move on. And we talk about the world stage and we end up getting into its esoteric aspects, but it's there. Like, what is the meaning to the ear thing? And these are not coincidences. This is not synchromysticism. This is not the universe or the demiurge sending us messages. No, Christoph, whoever Christoph is, whoever's in the control room, Metascript Central. These are messages, these are symbols that are disseminated in a very controlled, direct, and precise way. It's a form of propaganda, it's a form of advertising, it's a form of loading you up with post-hypnotic suggestions. Wow, time is flying. It's already 11. Okay, thank you, Cubstar. This is why we have a think tank. Okay, so he's got a New York hat. Because this is a multi-million piece puzzle, and one person could not possibly put it all together, or watch all the movies, or watch all the news, pay attention to all the various developments, and collectively, and since we are a collective who have arrived at the right conclusions as far as it's all fake, we tend to get good information. Okay, so he's at the scene of a football stadium that looks like it's been nuked or something. I'm going to play another 10 seconds of it. I don't want to get a copyright strike. We'll see what it shows us, but he's got the New York hat.
Those people on their feet watching this ball sail through the air. And downfield, there's a rookie wide receiver, third string, just leaps out of the pack.
So it's called Super Bowl Catastrophe. That's what this video is called. And I think he has a dog. Okay, now this is interesting. There's a dog here. I see the number 166. The reason why a dog would be significant is I've noticed in Fallout there was this movie poster for I think it's called either A Boy and His Dog or A Man and His Dog, and it had to do with it was in Fallout. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? This movie, I think it's called A Boy and His Dog. Here it is, sci-fi comedy, A Boy and His Dog. The dog's telepathic, apparently. Here we go. In the post-nuclear war United States in 2024. In 2024, Vic and his dog traveled through the wasteland in the former southwestern United States, where I am. The year is 2024, a future you'll probably live to see. Interesting finding here. I'll go ahead and put this in my notes. So if you follow me at minds.com/infiniteplanesociety, anytime I find something worth discussing, I like to put my receipts in one place. So I'm seeing Tom Cruise associated with nuclear disaster. A dog shows up. Makes me think of Christopher Nolan's movie Fallout, where it has a poster for the movie A Boy and His Dog, which I've never seen. So I look up A Boy and His Dog, and it's about 2024. And 2024 is referenced in Leave the World Behind 9/17/2024, sort of suggesting that's when we get the nuke. Just about out of time here, unfortunately. Okay, Violet Penguin says probably Fallout is based on it. Yeah, I think Fallout includes a lot of that stuff, a lot of movies that have that theme. But the boy and his dog having a connection to this scene here, there must be a connection. Remember Sirius, the dog named Sirius that died on 9/11? That on 9/11, the year 2000, was hanging out with Bill Clinton, who said Sirius is beautiful. The canine, which again, 119. And the reverse 9/11 is encoded into the Leave the World Behind zip code 11963. Okay, we don't have any more time, unfortunately, but A Boy and His Dog takes place in 2024. Definitely an example of probably some predictive programming, but looking at the wiki, it looks pretty twisted. Exogamous reproduction by electroejaculation and artificial insemination. This is insane. So if you want to watch it, it came out in 1975, and we'll see how close they were to the mark. Appreciate all the comments. Cubstar says, animated remake of Watchmen released a few weeks ago. Comedian smiley badge with a blood face, with blood down its face. Okay. The first half is about a comedian's assassination. The second half has an alien EMP, and that's coming out next year. Okay. Watchman, comedian, smiley badge with blood running down the face. Okay, here it is. I've seen that logo before. Didn't know what it was from. Yeah, that's Trump smiling for the camera. Look at me, I just got shot at. Fight, fight, fight. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Dirk says, I have an ex-friend, a CDN, ex-comedian, Howdy Mikowski. He's depressed and is only on YouTube pushing this idea. Very sad. Well, one benefit to becoming a skeptic is you can disengage from being emotionally entangled and enmeshed in a very unstable and emotionally dysregulated environment. The theme song, or the song Auto Hoax Chief Crow put out, it really does convey the feeling of ataraxia, peace of mind, a quiescence attained when one has applied skepticism toward the rumor mill media with all its bad news and psyops. Jim Frybrand says, greetings, is the raft leaving the earth? Well, the first thing is the raft has to consolidate, get big enough to manifest the Krakgwin, which is a Godzilla-looking thing. And when we've attained this critical mass, then we're going to take a walk across the world stage and then decide what happens after that. It's a race. Will they deceive people into going into the deep underground Mars bases beneath China? Before the conspiracy theorists can debunk it? Because I think the only thing stopping NASA or Musk from sending millions of people to the Mars work camps is flat earthers and people who don't trust NASA. They don't want people debunking this whole thing before they get it moving. I think they want a plan to offload extras and make them or have them colonize Mars. And again, I think Mars is beneath China. Deep underground Mars bases. Leo Pirate says, the Watchmen comic ends with a faked alien invasion. Okay, so they fake an alien invasion in a movie. That's pretty meta. You know, it's like Tom Cruise is going to film a movie on the ISS. It's like the ISS is a film set, but we have to pretend it's real. And now they're putting a movie set on there. The problem here, and this is going to give me major cognitive dissonance headaches, is that whatever Tom Cruise puts out is going to look better than what NASA does. It's going to look realer. His hair is going to look like it's really in space. And it's going to contradict 24 years of NASA fakery. I often suggest that they have to bring down the ISS because the special effects are so outdated. This space jalopy. They got to bring it down so they can bring in the new tech. And they might use Cruise to bring it down. There's predictive programming for Tom Cruise, Dead on the Moon. It's on South Park. Jim Firebrand says, I saw a photo circulating today on Facebook, supposedly of the entire Earth taken with an iPhone 16. I saw it was a fake. I got attacked. Their defense was, I was alive, you weren't. Oh, I was alive to see it on TV when it happened. Well, we didn't have blue marble until 1972. I'll have to look at the picture. Let's see. Now, one other point. If you're in the ISS, you're not far enough away from the Earth to have the overview effect. So anybody who claims they've had it from the ISS is pretty much lying. Dirk says, I watched A Boy and His Dog a year ago. Interesting and twisted. Very sick and evil. Reminds me of our slave masters. I may have to watch it. The movie Fly Me to the Moon reveals why they had to fake the moon landing. Although at the end of the movie they didn't really fake it. But they make the case for it. And they show how even the president was not in the know. And they show how all they had to do was have a simultaneous broadcast override the main feed. That's what they do with every one of these psyops. But in that movie, I think they helped set the stage for saying, yeah, we had to fake the moon landing. Okay, before we go, I want to play this clip one more time. This is the Ohio governor who said that there were 33 bomb threats.
bomb threats, each one of which has been...
And they were all hoaxes, by the way. Not a surprise to any of us.
And each one of whom has been found as a hoax. So 33 threats, 33 hoax. I will make that very, very clear.
Yep, you've made that very clear. Jurassic says, the recent shooter who did the 2022 interview where his hair was 2 different colors, blonde side would be the Trump side. That's the side that had the eye. Yes, fascinating connection. And I was looking at the yellow-blue hair, and I was like, that's green. That's the Joker. And the Joker shoots Franklin Murray. And Franklin Murray is the senator in Machete who gets shot at when he's talking about the immigrants, just like Trump was. So you see this predictive programming, how integrated it all really is. And the Joker Batman stuff has been connected to the major psyops for a long time. Not a coincidence. Look at anything that the Nolans have done. Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan, Oppenheimer, Fallout. And it's a fictional universe, and it's totally integrated. That's why you have the same symbols, the same messages being communicated. New York, the dog, Sirius the dog, Tom Cruise hanging with the dog has, and you know, in Vanilla Sky, he gets the idea to go into a cryogenic freeze and enter the simulation upon death when he sees a dog called Benny the dog on the Conan O'Brien show. And Benny the dog fell into a lake, was frozen, they thawed him out, and he's fine. So there's another dog connection to this thing. Elephant Tusk says, Tim, A Boy and His Dog is on Amazon Prime. Okay, well, I'm going to check out the rest of Furiosa tonight. I'll catch up on Bad Monkey. And I'll take a look at A Boy and His Dog. The main reason why I thought A Boy and His Dog, or it came to my mind, is I saw it on a poster in Fallout. Let me see if I can find the picture. Here it is. I watched the movie Fallout, and let's see. Yeah, that was part of the inspiration. Okay. Good to know. Christoph says, we accept the world, the reality of the world with which we're presented. We were talking about Christoph, the concept of the demiurge, the programmers, and that's what we're analyzing here. Jurassic says, CNN showed that 2016 tweet that, oh yeah, I saw that. It wasn't 6/11 on that second tweet, but his other tweet, so for those, just context, the shooter had made a tweet where he suggested that Trump should be done away with, and it was dated 6/11. And I noted that on CNN, it didn't have that date. But there was another tweet they showed, and it was January 8th. So the shooter's tweet was Elvis's birthday. Yep, here we go. He urged Iran. That's interesting. He was urging Iran to assassinate Trump. And the name Ryan, I connected to Iran. Now check this out. This is the other one. He tweets at Nick Haley. Please join Vivek as a team. Don't be selfish and arrogant. Change the course. Give us an option. And that was Elvis's birthday. So you had 6/11 and January 8th, two very interesting dates in the bigger context. I also make note of the green hair. Yellow and blue makes green. Joker connections. And then his constantly wearing the red and white stripes around his neck. The shirt, the white shirt with the red stripes, or the red cross. And, of course, the pink shirt he wore while being arrested. And pink has a greater significance. Now, I don't know if this means anything. A lot of people are making a lot about it, but they have him under arrest here. His shirt pulled up over his head, and his breasts are exposed. I mean, I would say chest, but like it's pretty prominent. I don't know what it is, but it made me wonder. Maybe this is some kind of hazing thing. Like, I don't know. You know, the whole Masonic allegory. The initiates, they have their shirt half ripped open. But is this some kind of humiliation thing? I don't know what it is, but the whole thing is a show. So, any ideas? Drop them in the chat. We'll talk about them. Elephant says, looks like an MK Ultra patsy. Here's one thing to keep in mind. Patsies are crisis actors too. Just because they're patsies doesn't mean they're victims or that they're acting in a role against their will. They're all part of it. Tom103 says Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy character, James Earl Jones in Harrison movies. Yeah, James Earl Jones recently died at 93. I thought there might be some significance to that. Namely, the Darth Vader role might have some significance with this bigger picture, but we'll see. This is The Edge is in Your Mind. I'm going to go back and watch Mad Max, and I'll probably talk about that tomorrow. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks for supporting the channel. Appreciate all of you who have been in this think tank since it started. Tomorrow's going to be a big deal. 9/17, hinted at in Leave the World Behind. So I'm not sure exactly, but something.
Into your brain.